Folks, welcome to the program. This, of course, is Stinchfield podcast. I am getting very concerned about Kamala Harris, not because I think she's going to make some kind of a great president, not because I think she's some great campaigner, but because the media is as powerful as I has always expected it to be. The media has transformed Kamala Harris, I don't need to tell you, into from a bumbling idiot into somehow the savior of the Democrat Party. She goes from being one of the most radical, progressive, I don't even like using that term, liberal senators, most radical, liberal vice presidents, to now being transformed into some kind of a moderate who's claiming they're not going to go back. Well, go back to what? Low gas prices? Go back to low inflation? Go back to a closed border? No, they're not going back to those things. She's right when she says that. But she has been transformed into almost the anti-establishment candidate. See, because Joe Biden, you look at this guy, you'll say, that's Washington, man. What Joe Biden is the guy who spent his entire adult life in the United States Senate, ends up becoming a president of the United States. He is Washington, the good old boy, white boy. Kamala Harris, you look at her, the media says, no, this is not Washington as usual. I'm here to tell you it is most certainly the Democrat Party as usual. So what do we do to push back against Kamala Harris? Well, a gentleman by the name of Alex Castellanos, who is a Republican strategist, had an unbelievable post. I thought it was great on what the Trump team needs to do to run its campaign against Kamala Harris instead of freaking out as we see her rise in the polls, as we see enthusiasm around her start to bubble up to the top. We cannot freak out over this, and we have to understand that you've got to take a strategic approach to Kamala Harris. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. It's very important that we break this all down because right now the Trump campaign is painting Kamala Harris as four things: the anti-democratic hand-picked candidate. She's being painted as the inept, bumbling fool candidate. But then they're also painting her as the cunning cover-up artist who orchestrated the cover-up of Joe Biden's mental capacity, when really what we need to be painting her as is a failure. And a lot of this is from Castellanos and the painting Kamala Harris as a failure, and how we paint her that way is a very good idea, and I hope the Trump campaign adopts a lot of this. So we're going to talk about that today on the podcast. First off, though, I want to welcome in a new sponsor to the program, Get21Now.com. Get21Now.com. Guaranteed up to 21% interest on your investment. Now, how do they do this? The secret is in the mining of the Bitcoin. I have actually invested with this company, so I can tell you I have put money with a group called NFN8. But I want you to go to the website, Get21Now.com. Over 8 years experience in mining Bitcoin. You don't get the wild ups and downs that you do with the market, but you know you want to be in Bitcoin. This is how you do it with the mining. So they isolate the volatility by having these giant high-tech warehouses where they can get electricity for a real cheap price, and then they pay you a set return based on your investment. I urge you to talk to them about it. Anywhere from 9 to 21%, direct deposited into your account. And guess what, folks? I've already gotten my deposits. This thing is phenomenal, and I figure where else could I get 21% guaranteed? So experienced beyond belief. I really like the guys. I've gotten to know them over the few months I've been dealing with them. And you can take an IRA and you can transform that into this investment as well, providing monthly cash flow for you. I urge you to check it out. Get21Now.com. Get21Now.com on your investment, and they're good guys. Talk to them over there. Get21Now.com for up to 21% guaranteed income. All right, folks, with that, let's get the show started.
Uncensored and unapologetic. This is Stinchfield. Here's your host, Grant Stinchfield.
All right, so first and foremost, I want to tell you that Kamala Harris is a total fake. She's a phony. She just came out now and stole President Trump's no tax on tips idea. So she's telling the service industry, hey, this is such a great idea. She's going to do it too. What kind of candidate does that? President Trump came up with the no tax on tips. She's a fraud. She is so ethically flexible in what position she takes, and she will change her positions strictly based on what she thinks will garner her power. This is the exact opposite of what you want in Washington. That is the quintessential power player in Washington, D.C. Someone that will negotiate where they stand ethically just for power. You don't want someone like that. So I was telling you that you can't have 8 different messages, even though some of them are all true when it comes to this, that she's anti-democratic candidate, handpicked. That's fine. Tie that to her. Is she inept, or is she the cunning cover-up artist of Joe Biden's mental decline and mental capacity where he's got none of it left? Is she the one who orchestrated the cover-up, or is she inept? The two don't really go hand in hand. I would not say that she's inept. I would say that she's a phony fake fraud. That's what I think you need to label Kamala Harris as, is that every single one of her ideas work to hurt the American people. And most certainly, beyond all of it, Kamala Harris is a failure. She is part of Bidenomics. And this is what I want the Trump team to hammer on. She's part of Bidenomics. She's part of the high inflation. She's part of the high gas prices. Now she says she's all for fracking. Come on, give me a break. Her whole life she's been against anything like this and the Green New Deal. We have to convince the American people not to believe her. And one of the reasons you can't believe her is when she says all these things that she's moving to the center and she's going to be a moderate. She picks Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. Now, the Trump campaign sees all this unfolding. They see the media now transform this woman into somehow the savior of the Democrat Party, get all kinds of enthusiasm surrounding their campaign. And I worry the Trump team is starting to freak out a little bit. So now they're throwing everything at Kamala Harris instead of just focusing down. Let all the noise dissipate around you. It's not going to last, and it's noise. Stay focused, stay disciplined, stay on message. And the message has to be Kamala Harris is a failure. So highlight the flip-flops. All right? So this was part of a plan by Alex Castellanos, who is a Republican strategist. He put this on Twitter. I saw Brit Hume retweeted it and said, this is good. And I read it. It's long. I retweeted it as well. Stinchfield 1776. It is good. So here's what you do. You paint Kamala Harris as the liberal that she is. Look, her positions live on TikTok and Twitter. They're not going anywhere. They're everywhere. You highlight the flip-flops now. Now she's for fracking when before she wasn't. Now she's going to be for border security and tough on crime when literally she was a defund the police nonsense. We know that she will sell her soul for power. These are the things that you have to highlight. Now, what are she and Tim Walz trying to do? When I watch their campaign right now, they're trying to claim that they are like you. You can't let evil President Trump in office. He's too mean. He's too this. He's too that. But we're like you. We see America like you do. Folks, they are not like us. Certainly not us as conservatives. But they are not like everyday uninformed Americans who may not know where they fall. These are radicals. And if you don't believe they are radicals, all you have to do is listen to Tim Walz, the man she picked as her running mate. She could have picked any moderate she wanted inside the Democrat Party, if there's any left. Certainly there are some left that are less moderate than Tim Walz, but this is who she picked.
A society that does not put equity and inclusion at the center of it is certainly going to eventually come to the places where we're at. This is a moment of inflection. It's a moment of real change. It's a moment that those folks who are out there demanding this are not going to take a commission or a report. They're going to want fundamental change. And that is what I think that's one of the exciting things in the midst of all this. You can feel a sense of optimism coming back.
Feel a sense of optimism. Coming back as America's been hammered, you take that soundbite, you play it over and over again. You talk about Kamala Harris and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and don't shy away from the idea that she is the DEI candidate. Joe Biden literally had a tweet early on in his presidency where he said, diversity, equity, and inclusion is so important. It starts at the top with my vice president. He admitted in the tweet that she's a DEI hire. Now, I don't care if you're black. I don't care if you're Hispanic. I don't care if you're a man. I don't care if you're a woman. I don't care if you're anything. All I want you to be is good. And Kamala Harris is not good. She's not good at all. So do not let her claim that she is like you. When you think about inflation and crime and the border and all of these things, who's responsible for that? Kamala Harris was allegedly the border czar. So if she's the border czar, she's the one that destroyed the economy. And of course, it destroyed the border along with it. So as the border czar, you leave the borders open. What happens? The illegals flood in. Crime goes up. That affects the economy. What happens? American jobs get taken by this cheap labor. That affects the economy. Then, of course, your anti-fracking, pro-Green New Deal are all part of the Bidenomics plan. What happens? Gas prices go through the roof. That adds to inflation. Inflation goes up. What happens? Destroys the economy because everything starts to cost more. Oh, and don't forget government spending. And by the way, I mentioned this Kamala Harris stealing the no tax on tips idea. She voted to go after service workers who are not declaring their tips. August of 2022, I believe it was. Kamala Harris votes for the Inflation Reduction Act, which put all those IRS agents into motion. And all those IRS agents, one of their tasks that was in this bill was to go after people who weren't paying taxes on their tips. So now she's coming up with the idea, no tax on tips. Well, she didn't come up with the idea. President Trump did. Now she's jumping on the bandwagon of this when she's the one who literally wanted to hammer away at service workers. She's the one that was sicking the IRS on service workers. Again, this woman is not like us. They want to tell us liberalism is joyful. There's nothing joyful about liberalism. I've got a comment on the Rumble channel. They're doing whatever Obama tells them to do. In many respects, they are. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are really no different in the fact that Obama is pulling the strings on them. But notice this whole idea of joyfulness, liberalism being joyful. We're there to help the people when really it does the exact opposite. It's all about Obama's old hope and change. It's about feelings. But I think Americans have now realized 4 years after Joe Biden that feelings don't work, okay? Feelings don't get you to a place of success. Policy does. And I'm sorry if your feelings are hurt when President Trump tweets and calls names. Now, President Trump, I would say, needs to go back. And I wonder this. This is hard for me to say. I almost feel like the campaign, when President Trump was tied up in court, had guardrails on it, and it actually helped him in the campaign because it kept them completely focused on the issues, right? Like President Trump goes after Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan says something positive about RFK Jr. I don't know if President Trump needs to be going after Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, we need that voice, okay? Is Joe Rogan vote for RFK Jr.? He'd be an idiot if he is. No offense, Joe, but you'd be an idiot to vote for President Trump. It's throwing away your vote, and it's literally putting Kamala Harris into office, not to mention RFK's policies are not good for America. He's an anti-gunner. He's a Green New Deal guy, and he's not going to be good. Yes, he's anti-vax, fine. But I don't know if you need to go after Joe Rogan. Stay within those guardrails and stay focused on Kamala Harris is a failure. The The Biden administration has been a failure. She was his number two. If anyone was in a position to stop what was going on with America, Kamala Harris wasn't, and she didn't stop what was going on. She doubled down on what's going on. Kamala Harris is a failure. She's a failure. She's a failure. Hammer away on that over and over again and say if she really is a moderate, why then would she pick a man like this?
He talks about this wall. I always say, let me know how high it is. If it's 25 feet, then I'll invest in the 30-foot ladder factory.
So that's what he says about immigration. Invest in 30-foot ladders. That's not what you need to do, clearly. That's a guy who's another open border guy. So you open the borders up, and what do you think is going to happen? She hires a guy to be her vice presidential running mate. Basically hires him, whatever you want to call it, picks him as an open borders guy. She's telling you everything you need to know to the American people. Everything you need to know. Now, there's an issue with Walz's military service. And this is really bad. The guy is in the process right now of stolen valor. There's no doubt about it. In my mind, stolen valor is very, very real. And we're going to talk about that. There's an interview that Alpha News did. I'm going to play it for you because it's fascinating listening to one of the veterans talk about how they tried to call out Tim Walz's stolen valor. So we will talk about that in just a moment. But before we do that, folks, let me tell you about my friends over at Patriot Mobile. I just got back from Mexico, and I was so glad I had a Patriot Mobile phone. 2 networks on this phone because I have 2 lines. It's part of the Patriot One plan. 1 phone, 2 lines, 2 networks. There were parts where one network didn't work in Mexico at all. So I just used the other network, and I was great. Where my very special lady friend, at times, she had problems with her cell service, and I always had a signal wherever we were. So that was great. That's one benefit. The other benefit is that Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. And when I tell you this, they believe in the things we do. Some of the money you pay for your cell phone service is going to promote the causes, going towards groups that believe in the things we do, Second Amendment groups, right to life groups, and those kinds of things. And Patriot Mobile is also putting its money where its mouth is and putting itself on the line, taking heat from the mainstream media for its stances on the very things that we hold dear. So please pay Patriot Mobile a visit, patriotmobile.com/grant, patriotmobile.com/grant, 972-PATRIOT, 972-PATRIOT. Use that promo code GRANT for a free month service, promo code GRANT, and call them at 972-PATRIOT and make sure you tell them that Grant Stinchfield sent you. All right. Tim Walz and his military service. Command Sergeant Major. That's what he calls himself. He was the Command Sergeant Major, the highest ranking for an enlisted man. It's an unbelievable feat to get there. The problem is he didn't really get there. They gave him the promotion, providing he finished some coursework. He never finished the coursework. He retired from the military 2 months before his unit deployed to Iraq, which has many veterans saying he cut and run. He knew they were going. He cut and run on them and decided to go into Congress. Now, even in Congress, I'll give you, that's service. The military for 20 plus years, that is service. I don't fault him at all for his service. What I fault him for are claiming he's a Command Sergeant Major when he's not. They broke his rank down. He did not retire as a Command Sergeant Major. Okay? So that's absolutely true that he is no longer Command Sergeant Major. When he calls himself one, he is lying to you about his rank. 2, he never fought in battle. He claims, we don't want to carry around weapons of war, the same weapons of war that you carry in battle should not be on our streets. The same weapons of war I carried in battle, he says. Well, he never fought in battle. So there was an interview done by Alpha News, and they did it with a veteran who called Walz's service out, was serving with Walz. In fact, took his place as Command Sergeant Major when he ditched and run. So I just want to play some of this interview because it's eye-opening, And it'll help you take the argument to your friends about just how devious and deceitful and really why you can make a claim for stolen valor when it comes to Governor Walz.
He's back again to wage a public war of words against Tim Walz.
He abandoned us. I mean, what the hell kind of leader does that? I mean, he just, as soon as the shots were fired in Iraq, he turned and ran the other way and hung his hat up and quit.
We'll get to Barron's new message for voters in a moment. But this all starts years earlier when Barron says Walz's misleading statements about his military service first led him to come forward in the fall of 2018.
So you try to get this message out, but Minnesota's largest newspaper checks it out, says it's 100% true, but yet refuses to print.
When I hung the phone up, I said, what the hell is this, North Korea?
Back in 2005, a warning order went out to the 1st Battalion, 125th Field Artillery to mobilize for a mission to Iraq. At the time, Walz served as the unit's highest non-commissioned officer, but months later, Walz would retire from the Guard, avoid the deployment, and run for Congress. Tom Behrens was next in line for the position and was asked to take his place.
I was like, well, for Pete's sake, if this guy quit, if I say I'm not going to do it, I mean, what the hell kind of leadership is that? If a company would say that we're going to deploy to Iraq or somewhere and you're going to be gone for whatever amount of time, and then a foreman just says, no, I'm not going. I mean, what does that say to the 500 people that work in that factory?
Behrens would go on to serve in Iraq on a nearly 2-year deployment as a command sergeant major. All while Walz began using that title as a congressman. Behrens says he first contacted Walz with his concerns, sending these letters to Washington. They all went unanswered.
But then we fast forward to the election in 2018 in Minnesota, and you try at that time to get people's attention with this story and also with what seems to be a very misleading statement that he continued to make about his service.
It kind of just sat there. When he was a congressman, he bragged that he was a command sergeant, retired command sergeant major. I'm the highest ranking person ever in the House, and all this lie that he was telling. The state of Minnesota came out after 2018, after this was exposed, and they said, well, he can say that he served as a command sergeant major, but he can't say he's a retired one because he's not.
And that's what he was saying.
And he was saying that, and there was lots of public, lots of cards coming in the mail, for him to be elected. They said right on there he's a retired command sergeant major, just tooting his own horn, just hanging on the coattails of people that actually are command sergeant majors that went through all the process and put all the time in.
A spokesperson for the Minnesota National Guard said Walz wasn't able to retire as a command sergeant major since he failed to complete coursework and requirements related to the rank. Verified documents show the Army corrected his service record. Walz was reduced in rank to an E8 Master Sergeant after retirement and his conditional promotion. Alpha News again asked Governor Walz if he's using the command sergeant major rank on his campaign website for political gain this year. A spokesperson said this has been in the news before and pointed us to a past story where Walz said, quote, normally this type of partisan political attack only comes from one who's never worn a uniform.
It's stolen valor is really what it is. I don't know of anybody else that's done what he's done, but we called it the truth about Tim Walz.
In 2018, Behrens gave the story the full court press.
We, retired command sergeant majors of the Minnesota National Guard, feel it is our duty and responsibility to bring forth the truth as we know it concerning his service record. I put together information on it and I sent it out to every single radio station and newspaper and TV station I could in the state. The bottom line in all of this is gut-wrenching and sad to explain. When the nation called, he quit.
Twin Cities TV stations and the Star Tribune were silent, even after Behrens says the newspaper checked it all out. The Star Tribune endorsed Walz in 2018 for governor. Between lockdowns, riots, unchecked crime, and a charred police precinct, Behrens felt he had no choice but again to come forward.
Allowing that to be burned down was just like having the Alamo get burned down. It's like, no, you defend that to the last man. If he would have went to Iraq, he'd still be hiding under his desk over there. Because that's just the cowardice that I seen portrayed with him.
So how about when he also comes out and he calls you guys 19-year-old cooks?
I'd take any 19-year-old cook before I'd go to war with him. I don't know how he could even utter such a statement. I mean, it's just absolutely sad.
So this election year, it's all built up again to Behrens' new grain bin message.
He called Jacob Fry an abject failure. So I was like, that's what he is.
Walz is a traitor, also made a return.
And the last one I put together, he said it himself too, as well, if they don't like my job, they can vote me out. So I wrote, vote him out. We need to vote him out.
So vote him out, and don't let him into the White House. That's the bottom line. Now, that gentleman is very credible. So here's what I have noticed what has happened with veterans and members of our military. And I want to make this very clear. I give members of our military the utmost respect. You put a flag on your shoulder. You offer up even the ability to go into combat. Whether you go to combat or not, I am grateful for your service, and I am grateful for Tim Walz's service. But there is another philosophy that somehow they get an ultimate pass on everything. Just because you're a veteran doesn't mean you get a pass on everything. You can't be rude. I don't even remember the cut him off now incident I had on Newsmax. And everybody, well, those on the left got so mad that I cut off a veteran who was, I found, out of line about President Trump and related to Afghanistan and things like this. And I said, cut him off now. Well, I got yelled at by the left and criticized only because he was a veteran. Somehow I'm not allowed to cut off a veteran. And in fact, I would offer up that veterans would say the reason they fought was so you can cut off anybody you want. The free speech is it, that if you can say whatever you want, veteran or not. Now, they're criticizing specifically J.D. Vance, who's also a Marine, for criticizing Walz on this issue of his command sergeant major and not actually serving in battle. Well, Walz isn't criticizing his service. Vance isn't criticizing Walz's service. Vance is criticizing the lies. The lies are what we are concerned with. Same thing with Kamala. The failures and the lies are what we're concerned with. The American people need to know about them. So this is why I'm urging the Trump team to focus in on the lies. Now, J.D. Vance responded to the criticisms he's getting for calling out Walz. He responded to that. But before I play that response for you, I do want to tell you about my friends over at energizedhealth.com/grant. energizedhealth.com/grant. Folks, I don't know if you've noticed, but I feel I'm in better shape over the last 3 weeks. I've lost 9 pounds. I'm starting to tone up the arms, midsection, all tightening down, and I'm feeling great and hydrated. Why? Cellular hydration. This is what Energized Health is all about. And the program that I'm on, like I said, 9 pounds down. It is about spirit, mind, body. Total body transformation is what Energized Health is all about. And I still eat many of the same things I like to eat. The diet is not some crazy, wacky diet where I'm hungry all day. In fact, I would offer I'm never hungry, and I'm eating more than I've ever eaten before and losing weight. So this is why I want you to check out energizedhealth.com. And if you are very overweight, okay, borderline obese, there are people here that have lost 600 pounds on the Energized Health program. Energizedhealth.com/grant. Do what I did. Start taking your life back. God gives you one body. Take care of it. This program, coaching, recipes, you name it, daily motivational videos, it's all there for you. You can be a success. Energizedhealth.com/grant. Cellular hydration. The secret, folks, is in the science. Pay them a visit today. All right, I told you I would tell you, I would play for this clip of J.D. Vance responding to the criticisms he's getting for going after Tim Walz. Why is he getting criticisms? Because the left just will find any reason to do that. But what Walz is saying is a lie. And what Vance is calling out are the lies of Tim Walz. Either way, the media wants to attack Vance, but boy, did he give it to CNN.
Left the National Guard. He filed his election paperwork February 10th, 2005. That was a month before the National Guard even announced that it was possible that they would deploy to Iraq, and it ended up being 2 months. He retired 2 months before they actually got the paperwork.
But on CNN last night, Dana, one of the people who was actually in charge of him said they knew they were going to deploy to Iraq in February of 2004, fall of 2004. So he knew he was going to Iraq. He decided to quit, to retire, whatever word you want to use.
Retire.
Because he wanted to run for Congress. He lied about that. He said that when he decided to retire, he did not know that he was going to Iraq. That is another untruth, as even his senior military officer said. So again, I'm not criticizing the service. I'm criticizing the dishonesty. Dishonesty spoken in favor and for the purpose of political benefit. And I think that the most important thing here, Dana, is it goes to Kamala Harris's judgment. Tim Walz is ultimately going to be the vice president. Kamala Harris is in great health. I'm sure she's going to be president if she wins for 4 or maybe even 8 years. Why did Kamala Harris choose a person who has lied about their military service? I think that is a serious lapse in judgment. And I don't want to hear from a campaign spokesperson of Kamala Harris. I want to hear Kamala Harris herself address what I just said.
You know, I've seen a lot of statements from veterans, including those you served with, saying it's just untoward to be criticizing somebody who served for 24 years.
Dana, I'm not interested in the ad hominem. I've heard from a lot of veterans groups who criticize Tim Walz. The question is, he said he served in war, and he didn't. That is a dishonesty. I couldn't care less what one or the other person says about it. I care about what the truth is. The truth is that Tim Walz didn't tell the truth. And importantly, Dana, this is about Kamala Harris's judgment. And I think that when you ask, why has Kamala Harris allowed the border to be wide open? Why has Kamala Harris supported policies that have promoted the increase in inflation? I think it goes to the heart of her judgment, and I think that that's what we should be talking about.
One last question. Donald Trump didn't serve in the military. He received a medical draft deferment for bone spurs to avoid serving in the Vietnam War, reportedly as a favor to his father. Do you find that shameful, too?
I think that Donald Trump didn't serve in the military, but he didn't lie about it, Dana. I've known Donald Trump for a long time. He really honors our veterans. He honors me for my service. Donald Trump didn't lie about serving in the military. He didn't say that he went to Vietnam when he didn't. This is the problem. I don't criticize anybody, whether they served our country or not. I think it's honorable to serve, but obviously a lot of people have reasons for not serving. I criticize somebody for embellishing their record, for lying, saying, I went to war. Dana, do you think that it's a problem that he said, I went to war, but he didn't actually? That seems to be a problem to me.
Well, they've corrected that. Let's move on to...
They've corrected it by admitting that he lied.
Let's move on to another important issue to voters.
You see what I mean when they turn everything back to Donald Trump. You're talking about a story where Tim Walz lied about his military service, his rank, and him serving in battle. He lied about it. How does this have anything to do with Donald Trump not going to Vietnam? What does that have to do with it? Donald Trump's already been vetted on all of these issues over and over and over again, but if they have something wrong with the Harris campaign, they've got to find the same thing wrong with the Trump campaign. I mean, to me, this is the most deviousness of the media. This is the quintessential deviousness of the media, that everything comes back to Trump. All they can do is try to just paint Trump as evil, 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 and just ignore the flaws of the left. You know, I'm looking at some of the comments on Twitter. I said, let's paint Kamala Harris as a failure. No paint needed was what somebody commented. And it's true. There isn't any paint needed. You don't need to paint her as a failure. The problem is, and what I'm getting at, is that the mainstream media now is portraying her as a winner. And there are many in the American public that now view her as a winner because they just believe whatever the media says. We've got to counteract that programming over and over and over again. Kamala Harris is a failure. America has been on a failing track under the Biden-Harris regime. And if you want more of the same, then Harris is your girl. But I don't think anybody out there really does. People are tired of the grocery prices through the roof. People are tired of gas prices through the roof. People are tired about worrying about their jobs. People are tired about crime in their communities. People are tired about the open borders and wondering what terrorist next is coming across the border. You want to continue all of that? Well, then you vote Harris right back in. You want to stop that in its tracks? then President Trump most certainly is your person. All right, folks, lastly, before I let you go, you know my friends, I always tell you about them over at The Wellness Company. I have oh gosh, where is it? Hold on, watch this. How many people leave their set in the middle of a read? Me. My Wellness Company kit. I've got it. I was at the drugstore. I told you I went to Mexico. You know, they got all those pharmaceuticals down there. I don't trust drugs coming out of Mexico, and I don't have to worry about buying them anymore when I used to do that sometimes out of Mexico. But I got the kit here now. This is what I need. This is what me and my family needs. Amoxicillin in here, Z-Pak, ivermectin, anything, mostly anything that I need to treat the most common infections, parasites, and antivirals that you need in the wellness kit. It's great. Go to twc.health/Grant. Use that promo code GRANT. All right. Tonight, folks, on the Real America's Voice show, we have a big show. Do you know China is buying up sperm banks? Why? They also bought Ancestry.com, basically, through BlackRock, and we know that China basically owns BlackRock, the big investment group. So why are they buying up all this stuff? What are they trying to engineer? Sperm banks? Ancestry? DNA? And then, you know, the pandemic? What happens? Fertility of women? All of this stuff is connected. We're going to talk about that on the Real America's Voice show tonight. Should be fascinating. I appreciate all of you. Stinchfield's Army rolls. Don't forget my website, GrantStinchfield.com, GrantStinchfield.com. Sign up for the email list there. Stinchfield1776 on all the social media platforms. Give me a follow. If you're watching the video, share it, like it, spread it, you name it, subscribe, please. It helps us. Helps the whole country. That's going to do it for us. I appreciate all of you. We'll see you on the Real America's Voice show tonight and back here on the podcast tomorrow. Take it easy, folks.